Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the end of hurricane season broadcast. I'm Jim Williams. Hope you enjoyed the documentary there from PBS, Inside Sandy, and also the one before that, which was Sandy Caught on Film. There's a lot of neat stuff in that video, too. If you missed either of those, you can see them at our Ustream channel at Hurricane City. Just click on the Ustream logo to the right side of the tracking map at Hurricane City. And you can also just go to canetalk.com. The link is down there in one of the threads that Fred posted down there on Hurricane Sandy. So those are really interesting videos. They were on television. I don't know if they're on TV anymore, but you can catch them at Hurricane City. Anyway, I got a lot of stuff to go over here tonight. I was going to wear the chicken suit. The reason I didn't wear the chicken suit is because this is a really serious situation that just happened with Hurricane Sandy, and I didn't want to make light of this, but I did kind of blow the forecast. I was biting on that GFS, and the euro kind of hooked it into the United States. I wasn't buying the euro there for a few days, and then sure enough, it ended up panning out, and we all know what happened from there on out. We have 131 dead in the United States, 67 down in the Caribbean. This is definitely going to be retired. That's going to be the main subject of tonight's show, Hurricane Sandy. That's the big story. Of course, Hurricane Isaac, too, for Louisiana. But I have my checklist I want to go over tonight. There's a lot of things I'm really pissed off about, and I might actually drop some unpleasant verbiage here tonight because I'm really pissed off about the way the global warming situation is being handled, the sea level rise, the lack of political action to get these things, do something. I mean, we're just sitting here on borrowed time, and we're seeing Sandy was a wake-up call. And just to let you know, we're going to go over all this stuff a little bit later in the show. What I'm going to start out with is showing you a couple slides, some pictures of what happened this season, kind of give you some statistics, some breakdowns on what happened this year. And then we're going to get to the open phone calls. We're going to open the phone line tonight, take your calls. I want to hear from some of you people up in the Northeast. I know you have some stories to tell. I want the audience to hear them. This is archive for our archive subscribers, so if you're a subscriber, you can always watch this at another time. But here are my subjects. I don't want to come across like Bill O'Reilly on Fox News with all my checklist of things that are really aggravating me right now. But first of all, sea level rise, huge story. I don't know if any of you saw the nightly news last night. They had a big, Science Journal indicated that we're seeing sea melt faster, 5 times faster than it was originally anticipated. From what they said from 6 or 10 years ago, it's happening like 5 times as fast. And this is naturally what's going to happen because when you have more melting ice, it's going to happen even faster in the future. And that's the calculations I'm worried about, is that they're continuing, kind of indicating we're going to see a steady rate of melting. But what I'm worried about is the less ice there is, or the less thick the ice is, the quicker it's going to melt, and it's going to just accelerate everything. And we're going to be dealing with huge sea level rises, so I'm going to get to that. But there's a lot of things I want to talk about in this hurricane season in the future. But how big was Sandy? Was it the biggest hurricane ever? I'll show you a graphic on that if you haven't seen the How Big page. That kind of explains next to the state of Florida how big Sandy was. The National Hurricane Center, did they screw this up? In your opinion, I mean, should there have been a hurricane warning out? They should have just left it as a hurricane warning from the time it was east of Cape Hatteras, which would have been about 36 hours. Usually they need 36 to 48 hours to put up a hurricane warning. Was it proper to not have a hurricane warning for this, considering what we know now? I know second guessing is easy to do. The construction argument, I can't remember what it was. It was maybe, I don't know, 2 years, 5 years ago. I don't remember how long ago it was. I had an argument with somebody at Cane Talk. Either at Cane Talk or it was somebody out on the street somewhere where I was having an argument about the difference between construction in South Florida and in the Northeast. And the person insisted that when they get a hurricane up in the Northeast, it's not going to be nearly as bad because the construction is really good up there. And even the homes on the beach can withstand storm surge, and you'll see for yourself that hardly anything will happen. Well, we found out different, that New York, they have building problems too, and a lot of those homes simply can't sustain the kind of pounding that they took from Hurricane Sandy. The subway situation, that's another thing that's a mystery to me, because all we heard about from before Sandy came in was, Are the subways going to survive? Once that salt water gets down in those subways, it's going to fry the electrical systems, and it's going to be impossible for them to get the trains back operational. But they got them back online pretty quick, about 4 to 5 days. Most of those trains and those subways were open and back in service. So a really good job by those people. But I'm interested in seeing what they did to get that thing back that normal. Or is it just a simple matter of pumping the water out of those subways? Global warming. And here's what we've been hearing all along, and I have a little bit of different opinion on this, but we've been hearing how global warming is going to cause less hurricanes but more intense hurricanes. Well, all I've been seeing lately is more hurricanes and less intense hurricanes. And not only are we seeing more storms, but we're seeing these massive systems that are causing these huge storm surges, and I think we have a big problem. I'm going to start out the slide presentation tonight showing you Fort Lauderdale Beach. They've got huge problems on the beach. There's a lot of damage from huge waves smashing the beaches, and we didn't really have any hurricanes come within 200 miles of Florida this year, or South Florida, where the erosion is taking place in Fort Lauderdale. So we got big problems with sea level rise already, and I think we've already passed a tipping point on the global warming and the sea level rise situation. I'll give you more of my opinions on that a little bit later on. Of course, my bad call on Hurricane Sandy, indicating I thought the GFS was right. The GFS was going to send it out into the open Atlantic, or even if it did affect the Northeast, it would be further north and be a lesser of a system. Well, it turns out the European model was dead on. I'll show you the models in just a few minutes. Pressure alone, me and John Mark went back and forth on the message board about this thing about the whole concept about, well, pressure. This was a really low-pressure storm, 940 millibars at landfall based on the recon reports. But was this, I don't got to word this correctly. I mean, what I said, my words were, if this had been 1938 and it took that track that Sandy took, the devastation would have been far greater than what you saw with Hurricane Sandy. And yet, he's indicating, well, the pressure was 940, that's good enough for me. This is the worst storm ever for the Northeast. And I just disagree with that. I think the 1938 was far worse, and had that hit today, it would have been far greater circumstances for New York City, for New Jersey coast. I believe that most of Manhattan would have been underwater, over several feet of water. It wouldn't have just been the subways. It would have been a lot of areas that would have flooded. It would have been much worse in Staten Island, much worse on the Long Island shoreline, if the 1938 hurricane had taken Sandy's course. But so that argument with me is just lame. I'm sorry, John Mark, I love you, buddy, but I mean, you're completely wrong on this. Oh, and here's another thing. I'm just to go back a few steps about the global warming argument. I'm sick and tired, man, of hearing Joe Bastardi and Dr. William Gray come out and say, oh, there's nothing to worry about. It's the media making all this stuff up about global warming, and it's the whole Al Gore thing. I mean, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth. I mean, the fact of the matter is, yeah, he's a politician, he's liberal, but he brought out the movie The Convenient Truth, and that just stirred up this whole division in the political circles that global warming isn't real because Al Gore brought it up. Just like the internet isn't real because Al Gore brought it up. I mean, can we just get off of this and start dealing with the reality of the situation? And Dr. William Gray, if I have to hear another conference of him sitting there saying that this is a media conspiracy and there's really nothing to it, I'll play you a couple of the clips if you don't believe me what he says at these conferences. I have them booted up here, and I'm going to let you hear it for yourself. These guys are completely wrong. Joe Bastardi is a political hack. He has decided to take a hard right stance on politics, and he's brought global warming into it. I like Joe Bastardi's love of the weather, but he's taken it too far with the political stuff and the ranting about the fact that it's the NAO and the MJO and the CBO and I mean, enough. It's just like, how many years have to go by where we see the sea level rising and rising and rising and the ice melting and melting and melting. Derek sent me an interesting link a little earlier from USA Today showing the Greenland ice sheet. In a 4-day period, nearly the entire ice sheet started melting rapidly over a 4-day period. I mean, this is something we've never seen before. So anybody that believes that global warming isn't real at this point, or politically or scientifically tries to find some reason that it's not real, it's just, I just don't even know what to say. I'm just so tired of it. My city picks were horrible this year. Here are my I graphically put them out every year. I put out my list of cities and the reasons why. I announced them on the June 1st broadcast. My 20 top cities, only 7 of them were affected, and that's only because of Tropical Storm Debbie. Had it not been for Tropical Storm Debbie in the Northern Gulf, I don't think I would have had a horrible year picking cities this year. But it does not just include hurricanes. It's tropical storms and hurricanes, and they come within 60 miles. It's a hit. Debbie affected a lot of those areas. Key Largo was affected by Isaac. We had Spring Hill, Florida, affected by Debbie. Homosassa, Marathon was affected by Isaac. Andros Island by Isaac. Apalachicola and Panacea were affected by Debbie. So Isaac and Debbie basically gave me 7 of my top 20 areas that were affected. So I did pretty good again this year on my city picks, even though I thought that was going to be the big one for these areas, but that didn't necessarily materialize. I'll get a little more into detail on that in a minute, too. The low ACE this year, for those of you that don't know what the ACE is, it's a cumulative cyclone energy. There's calculations that go into it squared off over, they take all the destruction potential of the hurricane over every day of the hurricane season or some such. I'm not sure, off the top of my head, I'm not sure the exact calculation of it, but this year's ACE was 128, and that's about 30% above the average for hurricane seasons. And we only had one major hurricane this year, Michael. Now, Sandy may get upgraded to a major hurricane because when it came into Cuba, it was pretty powerful. 110 miles an hour, it did a lot of damage down there, so it may get upgraded to a Cat 3. So that would only make 2 Category 3s, but we had no Cat 4s or 5s this year, surprisingly. And there's only 2 years that's happened in the past since 1995, since we've been in this active period. Only 2 seasons we saw no seasons with Cat 4s or 5s, and this is one of them. But both of those years were El Nino years. There's really no explanation for this hurricane season as far as the numbers and the lack of major hurricanes. There's really no explanation for it, and we're way overdue for the United States for a major hurricane. I was down in Isaac in Key West. I was down there with Derek Sibley, Storm Chaser Jim Leonard. There were some other guys down there. Rob Jones was down there. In fact, by the way, Rob, if you're listening tonight, congratulations on your gig at the ABC affiliate here in West Palm Beach, doing the weekends on a weatherman for the weekend report. So it was interesting seeing Rob on TV. But we had a good time down there in the Keys filming Hurricane Isaac. It was a minor thing. I had my mini IP cam up this year. That's the first time I used it, and it's been put to sleep for the off season. But next year we may get out and start chasing some of these storms, because I got to admit, covering Hurricane Isaac and Sandy was really disappointing as far as the contribution by storm chasers. I know it's not so easy to get out there and produce live video during a hurricane, but Jeff Petrowski was out there in the Garden State Parkway. I don't know if you caught any of the archive from Hurricane Sandy, but look, I got to get out there and get in these storms to get you the footage you need to see. I want to get in the right place, get people the footage they want to see, and present a show that is a complete package, because the storm chasers, they're out in the storm and they're just filming the storm. They're not actually showing you satellite pictures, radars. They're not getting the latest news and the information from the networks, the local TV. So what I'm just going to try to do is get out in the storms. And Bill Phillips, who will be on here in a little while when we open up the discussion, Bill is going to handle the Hurricane Warning Show while I'm on the road, and I'll be live on the Hurricane Warning Show, so I'll be basically narrating what's happening. But Bill will be able to show you satellite pictures, radar, local news, flip back and forth to the other storm chasers that are out there, so we'll be able to put a complete package together for viewers to watch what's happening. But I'll be out in the storm to be able to give you before, during, and after what's happening in the storm. I'm going to try to do that if it's from Mississippi through South Florida up to South Carolina, but anything north of that, I'd have to really think hard about it. And going all the way to Louisiana or Texas is probably highly unlikely. But it's all depending on my schedule and timing and everything else. But that's something that we're trying to get in the works here for the future, to present a nice view of what's happening for the viewers out there when the hurricanes are hitting, because it's just not enough what we're doing right now. Was this the worst storm ever? Was this worse than Katrina? That's another thing that's really annoying me that I'm hearing a lot in the media, because they keep upping the number of the damage, $79 billion now for Hurricane Sandy. Now, Katrina was about $120 billion in some of the estimates that I've heard. But let's be real. I mean, even though I haven't been up in Sandy in the aftermath and I haven't seen it myself, I've looked at the aerial shots up and down the coast. We're talking a lot of destruction, but it's hit and miss destruction. If you go down and look at Mississippi and into southeast Louisiana from Hurricane Katrina, and it's complete devastation. Those areas where the homes were knocked off their foundations and dragged inland for at least a mile inland. So, I mean, the whole notion that this is the same as Katrina is kind of absurd. Plus, we had 1,300 people die in Katrina. So, excuse me. Katrina, far worse as far as fatalities, money, the whole 9 yards, the legacy of Katrina. You'd have to go there and see it for yourself, the magnitude of it. This was spread out over a larger area, though, so I could see where the numbers could be fairly similar. But the last I checked, I think there was a whopping like 300,000 homes in Katrina that were completely destroyed. I mean, that's an unimaginable number compared to Sandy. I think we're talking about maybe 25,000 homes that were completely destroyed. So it's kind of a different animal of Katrina. So I mean, I just don't see the comparison there. And this is to say that this was a horrible situation for those people in New York. It was a mega disaster, no doubt about it. FEMA. Once again, FEMA under the gun, but I got to say, I thought FEMA did pretty good this year with Craig Fugate getting FEMA and those people in there and getting help to the people that needed it. It's never going to be right away, people. Every year there's a major hurricane. It's the same thing. FEMA, 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 FEMA. Look, FEMA is in there to help write checks for people, to help get them back on their feet, get an apartment, get a temporary place to live. But now they're screaming at FEMA because they don't have anywhere to live, but it's not FEMA's fault. It's the local cities and counties that are not allowing them to build to erect mobile homes on people's property while they rebuild their homes. That's not FEMA's fault. They can't control that. So the local cities and ordinances are for no mobile homes on people's property. So the people can't find any apartments. There's no apartments to rent, and same thing with automobiles. FEMA can write the checks, but they can't heal everything for you. They can only help you with financial assistance. And food and water. Red Cross has been there giving people water and shelter. I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but look, this was a mega disaster. This is what happens. I mean, sometimes you can go a month without power. You need to be prepared. And this whole notion that you only need 3 days of prep for a hurricane, like you need to have 3 days for bottled water and food and all the essentials, wrong. You need 7 days. That's my recommendation. If any significant hurricanes coming your way, be prepared to live for 7 days without any help from any assistance from the Red Cross, from the local charities, from FEMA, none of them. Be prepared to last for 7 days. And for God's sake, don't call 911 during hurricanes. We saw this several times. You put the emergency workers at harm's risk. These guys are out there risking their lives. And it's not right. If you feel like you need to evacuate, you need to get out in advance. And don't give me the excuse that you can't get out, you can't get transportation, you can't get this. We know days in advance these things are coming, 4, 5, 6 days out. We need to stop with the excuses of not being able to get out and just get out. So many tragic stories in Sandy. Look, I don't know if you saw the end of the documentary that we just played, the Hurricane Sandy from PBS, but that story breaks your heart of the mother that her son ran out in the storm and she told him not to, and he went and left anyways to be with his buddies and hang out. And apparently during the night or before the storm, before Sandy came ashore, a tree fell on the kids and killed them. And the woman kept calling the kid's cell phone, and it kept ringing and ringing, and she kept calling like every 15 minutes. Nobody answered. Finally, she gets an answer, and it's a detective at the other end of the line. And he says, "Where do you live?" And she goes, "Where's my son?" And he goes, "We need to know where you live. Well, we'll talk about your son later." She goes, "I want to talk to my son now." He goes, "Look, we have to come to your house and talk to you." And she kind of probably figured at that moment there was something had horribly gone wrong, and her son was dead. They had to come to the house and tell the woman that her son was dead. I mean, these are the kind of tragic things you hear in these hurricanes. And, you know, as much as I like tracking them and being a part of these hurricanes and watching them, and they're kind of exciting, and it's at the other, there's the tragedy at the other end that sometimes gets lost in all the hype of these things. And it's just heartbreaking what that woman had to go through losing her son like that, and not to mention their property got destroyed too, so it's like the double whammy. So anyway, let me show you some images here starting with Hurricane Isaac. These two big stories, Isaac and Hurricane Sandy. We had 19 named storms this year. That's a lot of storms, so I'm not going to go over each and every storm. I mean, we'll be here till 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm just going to go over the important storms and show you what's going on with some of the images and how the models behaved. So let me first of all, before I get to the Isaac stuff, because that's what we're going to start talking about, Isaac. I wanted to talk about the erosion that's going on at Fort Lauderdale Beach. I was out driving around yesterday, and this is Fort Lauderdale Beach. This is just north of Sunrise Boulevard, and this is A1A right here. This is where people normally drive in the right-hand lane right along the beach. When you're driving around, look at all the ladies in the bikinis there. That's normally where you're driving. Well, it's no more because the wave action is beaten up against the seawall that was running along here. And in fact, you see a low level of the seawall right there. And it's dangerous because there's a couple areas where the road may be beginning to fall into the ocean, to the shoreline there. So Fort Lauderdale Beach is taking a beating. And keep in mind, we did not get any hurricanes here this year in South Florida. We had Hurricane Sandy about 200 or so miles to our east, and we had Hurricane Isaac about 200, about maybe 200 miles to the south of Fort Lauderdale. So neither of these came very close, and yet all this damage occurred. And this is because we're losing our beaches due to sea level rise, and this is something that really needs to be addressed by the politicians. Let me show you this next picture here, just to kind of give you an idea of how far down this stretches. Now these are these hang glider, the kite surfing guys over here flying around. But as far as the eye can see down here, all the way down, there's beach loss that's tremendous, and they've had to shut down A1A because of it. Now, if you go down to the tourist areas further to the south, not quite as bad. But I want to show you the next image. Well, not this image, but the next one. But this is aiming out the car window as I was driving down A1A. And as you can see, when you get right to the edge of A1A, it drops off practically right into the ocean. So we got a serious problem in Fort Lauderdale. Now here is a shot aiming south towards the popular tourist areas in South Florida. And notice this little jet of sand coming out like this. And that would normally be about where you would expect the water to start, is out in here. And this line up here is normal high tide right there. So as you can see, if you follow that line, there's basically very little beach left in Fort Lauderdale. I would say maybe 10, 15, 20 feet up to the seawall at high tide. Now naturally this shot was taken at low tide, so there's all this beach here you're looking at, maybe 60 feet, but at high tide it's a much different situation. And here's a shot facing north, same situation. We have about 60 feet or so of sand where the tourist area is, but then when you get over here down toward the condominiums down here, there's very little beach, maybe 20 feet. So big problems. And these buildings here, this is looking north towards Pompano, I would say, even though this isn't Pompano, but if you had that direction, it's up in Pompano. Pompano is the beginning of what's called the Atlantic Ridge, where South Florida's elevation increases, and it increases going up into Palm Beach County. But when you get down into Broward County, it drops off significantly, and it's more closer to sea level. And these buildings, some of these buildings are, 50 stories high out in here. They have pilings that go deep into the ground, sometimes, 50, 75 feet into the ground. So what will happen in time with the erosion and sea level rise is all the sand will get dragged out into the ocean, and it'll undermine these buildings, and all that'll be left is the piling. So what they're going to have to do is decide, okay, are we going to abandon these buildings? Because once the sand is all gone and A1A collapses into the ocean, there won't be any A1A anymore. There won't be any way to get to these buildings. So it's going to be interesting to see if they actually have to, at some point, maybe in 2040, 2050, 2060, who knows, that these buildings are going to be basically unlivable. And it's going to be a really interesting scenario coming up here over the next 10 to 20 years to see what happens in Fort Lauderdale with sea level rise. All right, here's a map of our entire Atlantic Basin. I know it's a little off-center there, but if you look at the majority of the storms this year were east of 70 west. And look at them all out here. And then you had the rest of them here. Here's Sandy, and then you had Debbie, and you had Isaac like this, and you had Ernesto down here. And you know, we only had like, what, 5 storms over here, and the majority of the 19 were out in the open Atlantic. So that's basically a kind of a clip of what we had this year, with Sandy and Isaac, of course, being the biggest stories this year. Here is Hurricane Isaac's track, and Isaac was coming out from the East Atlantic, you know, one of the typical Cape Verde classic track here. And you notice that the system crossed over Haiti and eastern Cuba, and then went down just south of the Florida Keys. Again, I was down there chasing that with the IP cam and the live video, the dash cam going at the same time. And then Jim Leonard was with us, and we had Derek Sibley. They went in a separate car in Jim's car. Jim had all kinds of problems. We were streaming live at hurricanecity.tv. What was interesting, though, is Jim's car kept breaking down, and I had to keep jump starting him with my truck. And you know, we were kind of separate on numerous occasions because I was doing my thing and they were doing their thing with filming and everything. And we had walkie-talkies. Derek brought his walkie-talkies, so we were communicating via walkie-talkie, and Derek would say, Jim's car broke down again, you need to find us over here, and we'd hook up, and I'd give him a... Anyway, it turns out we had a nice audience watching this the entire time we were down in Tropical Storm Isaac. A lot of people were caught up in the drama of the whole thing. It was kind of funny. A little aggravating to me personally, but now that I know that people were interested in the actual human side of being caught in the middle of a hurricane with all these car troubles and aggravation and, you know, all this stuff going on, it was kind of interesting to a lot of people. So maybe we'll try to investigate that, doing that again next year. But it was kind of interesting doing all that. Now, here are the models for Isaac. And what's interesting about this shot right here is, here we are in the Eastern Caribbean, and Tropical Storm Isaac is moving along. This is on August 22nd. Notice the H-Wharf pretty much nailed this track, the black track here, but the, I'm sorry, that was the Euro. Euro. This was the Euro model, which was, again, a really good performer this year. But believe it or not, though, the GFS still outperformed the Euro this year, even though the Euro nailed Sandy. The GFS still had a really good year this year, but with that said, I mean, here's the GFS going through the lower Keys and up the west coast of Florida. Well, you know, we all know that didn't happen. Here's the GFDL up in here. Here's the Canadian over here. They basically blew it. And meanwhile, the HWRF, the Euro model, the HWRF was just west of Key West. The Euro had it up here in Mississippi. So it gave people over here in the northern Gulf Coast some food for thought. People in the Florida Panhandle, Mississippi, Alabama were thinking, uh-oh, here comes Isaac. The Euro is calling it. And the other models are taking it over South Florida and into the Gulf. So this could be a really bad scenario for the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Well, when we go out in the future, let's go the next day. And here, well, this is 2 days later, August 24th. And there we see Isaac south of Hispaniola. All the models over East Cuba, skirting the north coast of Cuba. Here's the H-Wharf, taking it just about in where it ended up coming in. And the Euro was still sticking with the Alabama-Mississippi border. So there was a lot of talk. I remember for quite a few days there was a lot of people going nuts over the fact that this was going to hit the Florida Panhandle. It was going to be in Alabama, possibly Mississippi. But people weren't thinking about Louisiana at that time. It wasn't that big of a story. Louisiana's out of the mix, no problem here. Let's not really think about it too much in Louisiana. Now, I'm sure there were some people in Louisiana that were all over this and thought it was going to come there because they think everything's coming there in Louisiana. But the models weren't showing that. The GFS, again, up here in the Big Bend, Florida area. Same with the Canadian, the BAM models. And the GFDL had it over the Fort Walton Beach area. So the warnings were up. Everybody was freaking out. This is going to be the big one for the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Well, guess what? I'll show you the next model in a minute, but look at the size of this thing. This was Hurricane Isaac when it was southeast of Louisiana. about ready to move in. But this is the poster child of the 2012 Atlantic hurricane season, if not Sandy. I guess you could call them twin brothers, other than Sandy was bigger. But if you look at the size of Hurricane Isaac, I mean, this thing is pretty gigantic moving in, and it affected a lot of people with surge flooding and well away from the center. So this is what you get when you have these big systems like that. And by the way, the pressures this year were not that low this year in the Atlantic Basin compared to what they were in 2011 and 2010. Now, when you have lower pressures in the Atlantic, you tend to have larger systems, and this year we didn't really see that low of pressures in the Atlantic. So we still have these large systems, so we got to figure that maybe global warming's playing a role in all this. We'll have to see about that. Let me see. My next image is Hurricane Sandy. Actually, I don't have the models after that last run from Isaac showing it going into the Panhandle. But we all know what happened after that. It skirted south of Key West, and then it took its aim at Louisiana. And it did a lot of damage. Let me go back to that Isaac shot, because I have a couple of Isaac comments to make on this. Hurricane Isaac, I think it killed like 7 or 8 people in the United States, even though the death toll wasn't that high. There were people that refused to get out of the way, and there's one guy. I was watching the nightly news, and there was a guy that was like, "Wow, this is just a squall. There's really nothing to worry about. That's why we didn't leave." You know, how many times do we have to hear this? And it doesn't really matter what ethnicity you are. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor or whatever. I mean, it seems like it goes across all social economic demographics of people that refuse to believe that this is going to affect them. And here's the guy saying this after Hurricane Isaac when they go to rescue. This is a guy in the Plaquemines Parish that had to deal with storm surge flooding.
I didn't expect for it to be like this, you know. The water to come up like this. Thought we was going to have just a little bit of rain squall.
That's not one of my new favorite sound bites. There's a little bit of a rain squall. That's all I thought it was going to be. A little rain squall. I mean, it reminds me of the guy from Hurricane Andrew.
Let me say this to you. I don't think this hurricane is going to be as bad as they're drawing out.
Here's another guy.
What do you think is going to happen to you when it starts blowing here really hard in a few hours?
I'd say the wind's going to really, really blow friggin' hard.
Oh, God.
I didn't expect for it to be like this, you know. The water to come up like this. Thought we was going to have just a little bit of rain squall.
The truth hurts, doesn't it? Oh, sure.
All right, enough with the sound bites. That's about all I have to say. Look, Isaac was a horrible storm for a lot of people in the southeast Louisiana. It could have been worse. The levees held up in New Orleans. They had about an 11-foot tidal surge there, I believe, and luckily it did not pour into New Orleans. But man, people, all these past hurricanes, I could go over numerous names. If this hasn't taught you by now that the water is coming to get you, I don't know what else to say. Hurricane Sandy. Anybody in the Northeast now that believes they don't have anything to worry about when these hurricanes hit, wake up. And here's another thing. These areas that haven't been hit in a long time, like Georgia, northern Florida, west coast of Florida, Big Bend, Florida, Key West, Apalachicola, Florida, even let's go up into Boston, Massachusetts area, Cape Cod. You guys, man, I don't know what else to say. You've got to be prepared. You have to take notes about what you've seen over the past several years and say, you know what, when one of these big hurricanes that's much bigger than they normally are is coming into my area, that water's going to pile up. It's going to come in those bays and waterways. It's going to come in down those intercoastal waterways, and it's going to start swallowing up everything. And especially you people down in the Key West area and the lower Keys, oh my God. I wouldn't go down there with a major hurricane hitting if you paid me. But if you want to stay there and die, that's up to you. But I've had it with these big hurricanes and people not taking them seriously. How many people have to die? I don't know. But Isaac, as bad as it was, it could have been a lot worse. But let's face it, the big story this year was Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy was the big mammoth storm of the 2012 hurricane season. Just when you thought the season was over, all right, so let's just shut everything down. Let's wrap everything up. Let's turn the computers off, shut everything down, put your track and maps away, blah, blah, blah. Here comes Sandy. And the thing spins up in the Caribbean. Models are indicating this is going to be a big mother when it gets out there north of the Bahamas. And sure enough, the models perform brilliantly, especially the European model. But here's the track of Hurricane Sandy. And at this point down in the Bahamas, down in East Cuba, I think this could have been a major hurricane, really high winds down there. And then the system moved into the Bahamas. We really didn't hear about really heavy damage down there, but there was some roof damage and storm surge flooding and whatnot. And then the system glanced off of Great Abaco Island out here, and then the game was on. This is when we knew it was coming to the United States. Right at about this position right here is where there was some doubt. Okay, is it going to come in like this? Is it going to go out into the Atlantic? It was a big, huge media story. I was kind of tamping it down a little bit because of Irene last year. We don't want to get everybody all riled up again, like this is going to be Armageddon, Category 4, 1938 all over again. So I wasn't trying to hype it up too much. I was trying to keep it low-key, and I was wrong about it. I mean, it came in worse than what I thought was going to happen, and it came in at a sharp left-hand turn just like the Euro predicted. But let's take a look at the models on this. Oh, first of all, I love this shot. This is from a Florida Gator game. I'm sorry, I lost it. This is from a Florida Gator game. This was about maybe a week or two ago. This is the spooky Gator guy. I don't know if you've all seen this clip out there, but the guy's like got this glum look on his face, and everybody else is cheering and happy. And this is the way I felt when Hurricane Sandy was beginning to make that left-hand turn. It was apparent at this point that this was not going to go out to sea, and it was going to make that hard left-hand turn towards New Jersey. And look at my face there. I mean, it's not. I'm in a football game. I'm supposed to be having a good time, right? Wrong. Look at this guy. He looks kind of worried down here too. He's looking off to the left, like, oh shit, we got big problems here. But the women up here, they're all celebrating. It's a good time. This guy, he's thinking, oh man, I wish I would have paid attention to that Euro. This is bad. I got to get home right away and start looking up some data and start getting some things ready. Anyway, I love that video if you haven't seen it. Now here's the old chicken. I was going to dress as a chicken this year, as I stated earlier, but this is kind of a serious hurricane season. A lot of people died this year. It's kind of in poor taste, but the chicken was in standby, and let's just put it off to the side for now. I'm not going to talk too much about chicken talk until maybe next hurricane season. And I usually say that for my city picks anyways. All right, here's the models on Hurricane Sandy. And let's take a look at what we were thinking here when it was north of Jamaica. And the European model, man, what can you say about this model? I mean, it just about nailed this. I mean, you couldn't have drawn it any better practically than where it came in, for crying out loud. This is 5 days before landfall. 5 days before landfall, the European model nails this. Meanwhile, the GFS is out here making me look like an idiot. And the GFDL is kind of on board. GFDL did a pretty good job on this 5 days out. So the GFDL was biting on it, and the Euro was biting on it. All the other models, Canadian all up in here, H-Wharf way over here. This is the LBAR. It's always crazy anyway. But that Euro, man, they pretty much nailed that track. I mean, unbelievable. And the GFDL. Let's go look at the best performing models on Hurricane Sandy, and there they are. The error. Look at the H-Wharf up here. Oh, God, horrible. Horrible. I mean, the H-Wharf was stinking the joint up on that storm. And, the H-Wharf is supposed to replace the GFDL model eventually. But GFDL did pretty good. It was a little bit worse than the ECMWF, but still pretty good. Of course, the Euro nailed it right here. And there's the GFS, the one that made me look like an idiot. So that's basically it. The European won that contest hands down. Great job by the European model. And I'm sure somebody over there at the European model is going to cash in even more because they're making tons of money. You can't get the model runs on that system graphically unless you pay them. So they're going to make a lot of money. All right, let's go to Fred's picture. This is from Fred from Hurricanes, Blizzards, Nor'easters.com. And Fred got out there. This was right after the storm, and this is a typical example of what the kind of damage was on Long Island where Fred was. This is just inland, and you can see the power lines being dragged right down, the tree just completely taking out the power lines. And it took a long time for a lot of people to get power. In fact, Fred said even as of yesterday, the day before, there's still about 1,000 people without power on Long Island, believe it or not. So a lot of stuff going on Long Island there. And further south, naturally, we've seen the devastation. Now, I am going to play a... let me go back here. I'm going to play a slide presentation of the damage from Hurricane Sandy. And Bill's going to call in any minute here. We'll get Bill on the line. Bill helped co-host some of the shows this year. And while we're showing you the slide presentation, we're going to take your telephone calls here. The phone number to call into the show, well, I'm not going to give that out just yet because I want to get Bill's opinions on what he thinks about this season and all the other things I discussed, and then we'll open up the phone lines. Bill helped with a few of the shows this year. He basically covered Sandy because I was working. I had to scramble at the last minute to get in to cover Hurricane Sandy. He covered all the local news, the reports and everything, and we archived it for the archive subscribers. And, of course, I did the Hurricane Warning Show, but it was after dark, and a lot of the webcams went out by the time I got home. So I was a little bit disappointed that I could not get any webcam shots. There was the cam in New York City that was streaming, and okay, there's Bill on the line. And there we are. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, turn it down just a little bit. You're overmodulated.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Are you there? I can't hear you.
I cannot hear you at all. You've got a nasty humming noise.
Here we go again with this stuff.
Jeez, how did we get into this again?
Well, this is why we were supposed to get the sound checked in advance.
We did all of this with this number a month ago.
I know. You know what? Call me on the fax line then. Call me on the fax line. Let's see what happens. All right. You know what? We had this whole thing all set up, and I don't know what happened. All right, well, anyway, what you're looking at is a slide presentation of the damage in Long Island and in New Jersey while we're waiting for Bill to call in on the fax line, and maybe the callers can hear on the Magic Jack line. I don't know. Just 1 second, folks. Okay, let me switch sources here. Okay, I'm back. Do I have sound? Okay, my volume is on. Let me see if I can get Bill here on the fax line. Are you hearing me on the fax line?
Much better.
Okay, well, we have a problem with the Magic Jack line. Let me just check the settings on the coupler here. Everything's the same. What are you calling me? Are you calling me on your cell or on your landline?
I'm on my landline, but that should not matter. We adjusted it with both phones, Jim, a month ago.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk technical crap.
All right. First of all, before you get started, Bill, I want to explain to people the auto date there on the screen. By the way, while you left me, my headphones busted, so I'm sitting here with a hand mic. And it's all thanks to this thing here below my feet, Bonzo. And the thing broke in half. It's unbelievable. All right. The blinking thing on my head, that's a whole other situation about a month ago or so. The regular camcorder I use for the shows fell on the floor and cracked, so I have the old backup camera going, and so that's why you see all these things all over the screen. T30, SB, auto date, all these things. I can't figure out how to get the words off the screen.
If you can get those words off the screen, that's a much better shot than you ever had with that other camera.
Really?
I like it.
All right, well, let's go ahead and I'm going to have to turn my volume up because I'm using the lapel mic now. Tell me, well, let's go through the checklist, Bill. I mean, you come on, speak to me. You always have a lot of things to say, and now you're on the show and you're quiet.
All right, well, you pretty much, the problem with that is pretty much I agree with everything that you've talked about, and I don't want to be redundant. I mean, we've got a major problem with global warming. I'm tired of the media and certain people, Dr. Gray, Joe Bastardi, and the rest, just sweeping it under the rug. It needs to stop. We've got a major problem on our coastline. The rate of sea level rise is 5 times worse than predicted. I mean, you're showing maps within 50 or 100 years of portions of South Florida and the Outer Banks, as we know it, aren't going to exist in 25 and 50 years. We're already having problems on Highway 12, which is the main artery that runs from Cape Hatteras on up to Nag's Head. Already, portions of it are going underwater just with an astronomical high tide or just a regular northeast wind piling the water up. You don't need a storm out there to cause problems now. You can't tell me that's normal, because it's not.
Yeah, and the other thing is the fact of the matter is we're dealing with these larger hurricanes. They're going to bring in more water, and it's not just a matter now. And I was listening to Derek's show. Derek did a show last night. He had Michael Locke on, and I have a great deal of respect for Michael Locke, but he's of the opinion that, I mean, I can't definitely say that he doesn't agree with global warming, but he's kind of more or less saying that this happened back in the 60s and it's happening again. But I'm sorry to say...
Tim, are you doing something with a mixing board? That buzzing noise is back.
I don't know. It stopped now.
Going in and out. Ugh. Oh, well, go on.
Anyway, the hurricanes happened in the 60s, but that doesn't necessarily mean that global warming was happening in the 60s with sea level rise.
Well, no. We know that global warming. Let's for the sake of argument, because I think this is a pretty safe bet. Global warming really took off in earnest beginning in the 1980s. Kind of under the radar, for 20, 25 years. And then you had another proverbial switch flipped with the hurricanes, beginning with this active period from 1995 to present. So combine those two things, you have a major problem. Go ahead.
Well, Bill, I'm going to play a couple of clips from Joe Bastardi and, not from Joe Bastardi, from Bill Gray and from William Klotzbach, and I'm going to show you, or let you listen to what they had to say about global warming. Now, this was, Bill, I think you were with me. What year was it when we were interviewing, we interviewed him last time when Derek was there, but I'm not talking about that time, the previous time, or the one time before that. Do you remember what years those were?
We interviewed him in, we interviewed him in 2011, and then I believe it was 2011 and 2009, or maybe 2010 even. I think it was 2010.
I think it was a lot earlier than that. I'm thinking 2007. Because I remember when Phil Klotzbach said it's going to be, maybe I was by myself and asked him this question, but I asked him, do you think we're going to see global warming increase with, or the sea levels continue to increase in temperature? And he said he thought it was just going to be a temporary thing. It was going to last like 4 or 5 years. And let me play that clip for you.
Play the clip.
Well, Dr. Gray, I know you don't speak for Dr. Gray with everything he says, but he does say 5 to 10 years he expects things to cool again. Do you believe that? I mean, do you really buy it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, time will tell. Certainly, if we don't see cooling in the next 5 to 10 years, then that's probably our theory is invalid. I think that's a pretty fair statement, is that we should start to see a leveling off of the warming and a slight cooling over the next 5 to 10 years. If that doesn't occur, then there may be something else going on.
What do you think about that?
For starters, I wasn't with you because it was too noisy. We were interviewing him in a quiet environment. But I'm not surprised. I think he needs to. I wonder what he will say once he is away from his mentor. I'm wondering if we're completely getting his views right now. You understand what I'm saying? I don't think he wants to alienate or upstage Dr. Gray out of respect.
Here's another Dr. Gray clip of him saying it's all exaggerated.
And this whole global warming idea, I think it's grossly exaggerated.
If I have to hear that again, I'm going to throw up.
Here's Dr. Gray again.
So things certainly look to be getting worse.
Oh, wait a minute. That was kind of contradictory, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, maybe we're not trying to twist his words around. Stop it.
All right, here's another one.
To push global warming. This is the in thing. The Eastern media, of Time magazine, all the things show this. So they're poised to give out money and grants of people who will go along with the global warming and say the CO2 is getting worse. So that's what stimulates people to come in, and many of these people are very talented. They have good credentials. They write a paper, arrange the data in a way, write the paper, show things are getting worse, they get it published. The press wants to make an excitement, so they come in and stir it up. And I think it's been terrible, some of the things I've seen.
I don't know what to make of this.
I don't either. By the way, I could barely hear that.
Well, it's coming in really loud on the broadcast, so I just listened to it.
All right, so okay, that's fine. He is, with all due respect to Dr. Gray, he's a legend in the business. He's done a lot in a lot of respects, he is the father of hurricane forecasting. But now I'm going to throw him under the bus. Sorry. He is like, he's like your classic grandpa or very old relative that you can slap them in the face, you can show them all the evidence you want.
Slap them in the
what
face?
you show them. You show it to them.
I'll let you slap them on the next conference. You go over there and slap them.
No, can't do that. But I'm just saying, you can show them whatever you show them. It doesn't make a whole hell of a difference because they're stuck in their ways. He's stubborn. He doesn't want to admit he's wrong because it invalidates a lot of what he stands for, and he doesn't want to let it go.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. I think that's the problem. He doesn't want to let it go, like that he's wrong about this. And I think that even with the accelerated ice melt that we've seen over the past 5 years or 10 years, because the less ice there is, the quicker it's going to melt the next time around. After when the next summer comes around, it melts even faster. And I think that he's expecting this magical pool of the Atlantic thermohalion circulation to come sweeping around and all of a sudden, change the patterns in the ocean and make it cool again. I mean, I'm just not buying it. I just don't. And I've told you this off camera or off the shows numerous times. I believe that, and this is just my opinion, that the Earth started out as a ball of ice and it's been melting rapidly ever since the day it was created. And I think the only thing that stops it from melting is these catastrophic events like asteroid impacts and major volcanic eruptions and like a Yellowstone type situation, and then it sets the Earth back in climate, sometimes 100,000 years. And then it takes us a long time to get out of it and start warming again. And I think that's what's happened is we've had all these disasters, and now we've gone a long time without an asteroid impact. And we're going to keep getting warmer and warmer, and I don't think any ocean current's going to change it.
The only thing that will change it is another asteroid impact. That's a whole other discussion for another show, asteroids. That's a weather in the media show in the future, maybe.
All right. Since we can't take call, you could try calling on this other Magic Jack line if you want, if you're a listener out there. That number is 561-27... 561-749-1200. 561-749-1200. You can try calling in on that line and see if you're able to get through and have a legible conversation. Or if you can't get through, just go ahead and email jim@hurricanecity.com, jim@hurricanecity.com, and give us your opinion on all the subjects we're talking about here tonight. If you think we're wrong about it, I'd like to hear about it. If you think global warming there's no such thing as global warming, and this is all just a big figment of our imagination, that the sea level rise is just imaginary, and all these things are caused simply by storms and nothing more, I'd like to hear from you. We'd love to hear from the people up in the Northeast and New Jersey and Long Island that were affected by Hurricane Sandy. We want to hear your stories. I'm getting tired, Bill. Let's change subjects a little bit. Getting tired of the people bitching. I heard it again on the nightly news. FEMA taking a lot of heat from people on Staten Island.
I'm sorry, go on.
Now they are getting their checks, and here's the problem. Apparently the local governments are not allowing these people to set up mobile homes on their private property while they rebuild their properties. Because we've seen, remember that video I showed you from Hurricane Charlie? After Hurricane Charlie hit in 2004 in Southwest Florida, rather somewhat affluent residential type neighborhood. Okay, here's the magic chat. Let's see if we can get somebody on this line. Okay, is there a caller there?
Yeah, hi, Jim. Tony Mondero. How are you?
Hey, Tony. Good to hear from you. You seem like you're coming in okay, so let's go ahead with the conversation.
Sure. Yeah, well, we got pounded here, Jim, with Hurricane Sandy for sure. As here in our town in Harrison, Hudson County took a pretty good beating. Our county took a good beating, and so did coastal New Jersey and the Jersey Shore. And, ask away and fire away any questions you may have, and I'll try to fill in the blanks for you.
Well, first of all, let me just make sure you're coming in okay on this thing, Tony.
Sure.
Yeah, we got your volume okay. So apparently there's nothing wrong with the Magic Jack line. It's just a glitch or something. Tony, what's happening with your particular area now? Explain to the people where you are in relation to Hurricane Sandy, and how did your area fare, first of all?
Sure. I'm located, Jim, just inland, say where the New York Bight is, as the Battery of New York. I sit right to the east of the city of Newark, if somebody's looking on the map, in a town called Harrison, New Jersey. And our town sits right along the Passaic River. We took a pretty good storm surge here from Sandy. The water was going overtopping the river 2.5 hours before high tide. There was a mad dash to do evacuation. As you know, the towns in the county here was very slow for evacuation, and that cost them, Jim, not as far as lives, but as far as people sheltering in place. It was more or less, it was a very last-minute decision to evacuate here in my area. We had in Hudson County, which kind of borders New York City, the county itself, right across the river, the Hudson River would be the island of Manhattan. And we had storm surges in Jersey City and Bayonne of 10 to 12 feet measured. And here in our town, in Harrison, coming up the Passaic River, we had a storm surge that I measured anywhere between 3 and 5 feet, something that was unprecedented for me. I've been officially doing weather since 1982, and I've talking to a lot of the old salts around town and never seen the river raised that high. Now, that was our local area here, where we've measured a wind gust here at our weather station of 70 miles per hour, a wind gust at around 7:15 that evening. We set the second lowest pressure ever measured here at the weather station at 28.54 inches. And surprisingly enough, here, we didn't have much rainfall. It was only 1.18 inches. But that wind pounded this weather center to the east like a fist for about 8 to 9 hours that evening. I actually thought we were going to lose the east windows of the weather station. Thankfully, we didn't. And we lost power pretty early in the game, too. We lost power about 20 after 7, and the only way we measured those high wind gusts is on one of those maximum vigilant anemometers, which is a self-generating anemometer, doesn't require any power, so we were able to capture the peak wind gusts.
And that was 71?
We got at 70 miles an hour here, Jim. The highest wind gusts measured along the coast of New Jersey with the weather flow network was 88 miles per hour, which was measured at Tuckerton, New Jersey. And Sandy Hook came in a close second, and that's in Monmouth County, New Jersey, a little further north. That's that little hook that comes out in New Jersey just before the New York Bight there, but near the Battery. They had a wind gust of 87 miles an hour. And the highest rainfall we can find with the storm with Sandy, it was in Cape May County, New Jersey, in a town called Rio Grande. They had 9.61 inches, but the storm surge was incredible. Some of the storm surge here along the Jersey Shore was measured anywhere from 10 to 20 feet.
Amazing. All right, now in your area, Tony, how many people are homeless?
Well, right now it's a little hard to tell, Jim, as far as in the Hudson County area, because we have a lot of people who got their basements damaged and their first floors damaged in places like Hoboken, New Jersey, and Jersey City. So I really don't have an accurate count, but I would say easily probably hundreds in New Jersey, if not thousands, especially along the Jersey Shore right now, are homeless. And really the real headline here, Jim, in our state here would not be metropolitan New Jersey where I live, but down in coastal New Jersey, like in portions of Monmouth, Ocean, Atlantic, and Cape May County. And Ocean County, really just to the north of Seaside Heights, where you had that satellite view earlier today before you start your program. That was centered on a location in Ocean County called Seaside Park, New Jersey, and that's you had that centered on Funtown Pier. Well, just north of that was really the ground zero of the storm surge, and anywhere from Manahawkin, New Jersey, and Monmouth County down to Ortley Beach, which Ortley Beach only had a few feet of beach to work with this storm. It's not like a wide beach, say like in Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey, or Seaside Heights.
So, Tony, what do you think about the... Well, first of all, how many of these people do you think are going to have to just let go of their homes and not move back in at all? Or do you think everybody's going to rebuild, or is there going to be some politics here as far as whether you build back or not?
I'm going to tell you something, Jim. It's going to be years before people can even think about rebuilding. Right now, as I talk to you today, there's still homes in the middle of Route 35 north down there. People, these were their summer homes. They saved up their whole livelihood, their whole lives rather, and their whole careers to have homes like this. And a lot of people are even thinking whether I should rebuild or not. A lot of people don't have the money to rebuild these homes, and some of the devastation down there is very surreal because where that ground zero was, that Ocean County, Seaside Park, and Seaside Heights area, that was my vacation spot every year. So I know that spot very, very well. And you're talking about people who really probably just don't have the money to rebuild. And they're, FEMA, I'm not on the ground there, in the Ocean County area, Monmouth County, so I really can't tell you about the response there. All I can tell you, which, you touched upon it earlier in the program, is I actually think that the response would have been better as far as evacuation was concerned if they did have a hurricane warning in place. Now, I know the National Hurricane Center has taken a beating on that. I understand the reason why there wasn't a hurricane warning issued, and probably you do too, with all the, all the rules and regulations on it. But I think the response from the public would have been a lot better, and people evacuating if a hurricane watch and warning was issued. Of course, these coastal flood watches and warnings and high wind warnings are issued all the time when we have these nor'east-type storms. But this was something that was coming in as a hurricane, and, just an hour before landfall, or just as it made landfall around the Atlantic City area, Atlantic County, did the storm go post-tropical. So I think that's going to be a debate for years to come. And some of the experts that I've talked to around the state of New Jersey, especially one retired expert, Jim Everwine, who used to be a forecaster at the National Weather Service at Mount Holly, he kind of thinks that when that thing came in, Sandy, there was a lot of warm core characteristics with Sandy, and it's going to be a debate for many years ahead.
Well, regardless of whether it was warm core or not, the fact is that this was a massive system with a massive storm surge, and I know it doesn't fit the criteria, meteorologically speaking, for a hurricane when it made landfall, but the fact of the matter is they knew it was coming. They should have had hurricane warnings up. It could have, the old thing with Irene last year, you yell barracuda, nobody evacuates. If you yell shark, everybody gets out, and this time they didn't yell shark because they didn't want to be burned twice in a row. I believe
that's a good point that you're making, Jim, because if you talk to a lot of people thought that this was going to be Irene all over again. They're not educated like you and me about hurricane tracking and hurricane tracks. They see the hurricane. This is the first time that I can ever recall, even the storm many, many years ago, back in the early 1900s, that directly hit New Jersey as a Cat 1 hurricane. That didn't come in off the water. That paralleled more or less the present-day Garden State Parkway. And getting back to your point is the people are not educated here, especially in New Jersey, about hurricanes and about weather. I bet you if you go along the up and down the Jersey Shore or anywhere in New Jersey, people wouldn't know the true definition of a watch, warning, or an advisory. So there's a lot of work to do, especially educating the public on these different variables. And that's why I'm saying if a hurricane warning was issued, I think a coastal resident hearing hurricane warning would have had a better response than hearing just a coastal flood watch or a coastal flood warning stuff.
I'm just amazed at this day and age, after all the hurricanes we've had hit the United States, that there's still not an educated public out there, regardless of where you are, that doesn't know what a hurricane warning means, especially if you're in a low-lying area.
Right.
Jim, they know what it means.
Right. And
it's denial.
There's
They
been a lot of behavioral analysis and studies done, and it's just the people, even back in the day when I was heavily involved in emergency management, people just don't think that the storms like this can come in like this. And when I saw this coming through and off the water, I said, wow, we're this is going to really be a real eye opener. And it, like, when we do a reanalysis, this wasn't a wind event, which I think we would both agree. This is a storm surge event, and a storm surge event which we're going to be recovering for many, many, many years to come.
All right, Bill, I don't know if Tony, if you can hear Bill, but Bill, did you have a question for Tony?
I did. What is he, and I understand I'm having a little trouble hearing his part of the conversation, so if you've addressed this, let me know. How would he rate the federal government response, FEMA, the federal government in general, because they're taking a lot of heat?
Did you hear that, Tony?
No, maybe Jimmy can repeat the question.
Okay, he was asking how was the federal government response, in your opinion, to from all the agencies in response to Hurricane Sandy? Was it what you expected? Was it worse, better, what?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Before Sandy, I was probably one of the top 5 Chris Christie haters in New Jersey. I couldn't stand the guy. I thought he was a real bully and a waste as the governor, to be honest with you. But what he did in Sandy, as far as taking charge and taking the lead, I was proud of him, and I would vote for him today if he was running for re-election next year. So as far as our governor is concerned, I was proud of him and how he acted with the storm, how he was working with the president, Obama, and also with FEMA. Now, as far as FEMA is concerned, I know they got in here quickly, the FEMA response, but talking to a lot of shore residents, they're not writing these checks for a lot of these shore residents, especially along the barrier islands, because the shore residents, that's their second home. It's not their primary home, so it's not covered by FEMA dollars. If it is, it's very little they're recouping with FEMA dollars.
Okay.
And that's when that goes to your point, Jim, as far as them rebuilding parts of that Ocean County and Jersey shore. It's going to be a tough thing, especially your Manilokings, especially your seaside, or your Ortley Beach, rather. Seaside Heights, their boardwalk was devastated. Right now, the boardwalk is no more. They've ripped up that whole entire boardwalk. And the 2 piers right now, they're trying to decide what to do. But I hope going forward they rebuild it smarter, because I think there's a chance of it happening again. And this is only what happened with a strong tropical storm, low-end Category 1 hurricane surge. You imagine if we ever got hit with a formidable Cat 1, 2, or even low-end Cat 3.
Exactly. Well, that goes. And Tony, I don't know if you saw my discussion on the board with John Mark about the difference between the 1938 hurricane and Sandy. What do you think would have happened if the 1938 hurricane had come in the same trajectory?
I think we'd be in big trouble. I think we were dead on with your assessment of that too, Jim. And like you said, the 38 storm had more in the way of surge and a hell of a lot way more of wind. What was the saving grace here, if there was any saving grace, is that we didn't have the high winds associated with a formidable Cat 1. Well, I'm saying formidable, a high-end Cat 1, Cat 2 hurricane, where we didn't have roofs being peeled off of buildings. Yeah, you had some minor antenna failures and satellite dishes and things that weren't put up on roofs securely blown away, but you didn't see any structural type of roof damage, at least as far as I could see right along the coast.
What would you say is the craziest story that you heard up there on the local news and through your emergency management, through your connections and everything, and through all your communications? What was the craziest thing you heard that happened during Sandy?
The craziest thing is when my buddy, a Seaside Heights firefighter, Eli Oliveri, had to evacuate their fire apparatus, get on the other side of the mainland off the Mathis Tunney Bridge into Toms River, so their fire apparatus at the last second was saved, and they had a shelter in place in the second floor of Borough Hall of Seaside Heights, New Jersey, as relentlessly Sandy with the surge and wind kept counting them for hours. I know here at the Weather Center we lost power very early on, and I always made fun of my wife buying me this $2 emergency battery-operated radio.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. That radio was the only way of communication that I had at the Weather Center that night.
Right.
That's the only thing I had was News Radio 88. Couldn't use WYNS in New York because they went off the air because their radio station got flooded. So it was very very scary, Jim, to see.
It really helps.
So what we've done here now, in the, after post Sandy, is we're working with an electrician right now, which happens to be my brother, to get a backup generator now. It took Sandy to do this, and also backup communication, because we do a lot of work here for the National Weather Service, Upton and Mount Holly, getting data for them, and we were in the dark. We couldn't do anything. It was a very helpless feeling. We lost power here for 5 days. We had to evacuate my parents out of this house here because at night it got very cold, and not even 10 days after Sandy, here comes a snowstorm that brings 5.2 inches of snow here.
Crazy.
And it was crazy. Jim, who could ever think of that again, of a hurricane, and within 10 days of a hurricane, you get a snowstorm. It was a horrible snowstorm.
It was insane. It was completely insane. Speaking of the battery-operated, your radio that you had with you, how did you handle it with the flashlights and everything? Because I know that's huge. When a hurricane's hitting down here, what I like to do is have a flashlight in every room of the house, because when you leave, sometimes you leave the flashlight in the other room, and then you can never have enough flashlights, it seems.
We were literally caught flat-footed because our power here at the Weather Center in Harrison is fed underground, and we're saying to ourselves, we shouldn't get any storm surge here, which we didn't. There was no basement flooding. But whoever thought the Exodus generating station in Newark would go underwater, would shut down the whole entire system, and was so early in the game. It wasn't like it was overnight or a few hours into the storm. It was very early. We just got done with this group, and they do a wonderful job of race examiner radio operators. We just did a test with them. We turned away, just go into the other room and just grab something, get back into the Weather Center, start gathering data, and all we heard is click, everything go off, and I was very scared. Now, if you saw that big, huge flash that's the show on many of these programs, that Con Ed station blowing up there in Manhattan, we are close enough that we saw that flash. It was almost like daylight.
Wow.
Just to the east here. And my brother Charlie come running up, because we just got, as you are a construction contractor doing paving, Jim, I'm a full-time emergency medical technician chief for the borough of North Arlington in Bergen County. That's what I do for a living. And me and him just worked the shift together. We were working a day. Actually, I was coming off of a triple shift, which is 36 hours straight. He comes running up, looks out to the window to the east, goes, "Wow, Tony, did you see that big flash? We got a big fire out there somewhere." Now, it wasn't those fires burning out in Long Island, but what he saw was that power substation, blowing up out there in Manhattan. And you can see, because between the squalls and between the rain, you can actually see in Manhattan and all the lights going, every Manhattan Island going completely dark. It was very surreal. What was that special they had? Day after tomorrow, or it could be tomorrow, or whatever that special was. Day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just like that, as far as the flooding and everything. It was very surreal to see, to see that happen here.
I bet your blood pressure went up.
Still to this day, I still can't believe that I'm talking to you now on a hurricane wrap-up show, being a victim of a storm. It's very surreal.
Yeah, I bet your heart rate was racing there for quite a while.
Well, yeah, it was me and a 13-inch beagle dog huddled. Here we are, trying to, weather the storm and also trying to take care of my parents. And it's very hard to be maneuvering in the dark, trying to just to get your bearings, because it catches you so off guard and it happens so quickly.
Yep.
And at that time, too, our town did not evacuate any people. And then here they are in low-end hurricane force, strong tropical storm force winds, trying an effective evacuation, evacuating hundreds of people out of their homes and stuff as their basements are filling up with water, because a lot of people are living in first-floor apartments here in basements, And we measured water here, Jim. If you look at the map